The Everything Sequel podcast is brought to you by 2T Fitness and the Vegas Beer Guys.
The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language, and I will not go to my room.
How Dare You Awards. Joining me, the man in the mask himself, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Hit him in the chest with one, Tom.
Wow, that's terrible. Take off your clothes.
One of my least favorite parts of this movie.
Really?
Just in the sense of, it's one of those, this woman is unburdening herself about the trauma in her past life, and all the man can think about is, let's fuck.
I don't think there's a line in the series that better sums up the link between sex and trauma in this franchise.
Yeah, you're right. Well, here we are. We're here to talk about Halloween H20 20 years later.
All of the above.
Yeah. I don't mean we're talking about it 20 years later, everyone. That's a part of the fucking title. We both list this.
Can we just stop for one moment? The 20 Halloween.
Yes.
Self-explanatory. 20 years later, self-explanatory. Beyond a water pun.
Yeah. Right.
H2O? I mean, I don't want to knock it too much because it was Jamie Lee Curtis's idea, and I love that they took her seriously enough to let her do it, but...
Well, but what it means is that they really named this movie Halloween 20 years later, 20 years later.
Yeah.
That's what they named this movie.
Yeah.
Halloween 20 years.
Yeah.
No, just Halloween 20 years later.
I also think if your title is going to be a pun, the pun should relate to something that's in the movie.
Right.
Whether that's I don't know,
in the movie all they'll say is 20 years ago.
Right. They need to be every 5 minutes they need to be drenching themselves in water for this pun to make sense.
Oh,
but goodness. I interrupted your business.
So yeah, business. I mean, we are talking Halloween H20 20 years later. This is a 1998 movie directed by Steve Miner. Not Miner, Miner.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he's definitely not a minor.
Yeah.
He's a major.
But he's he's got horror horror experience. He's directed Friday the 13th Part 2 and 3. He directed House, which we did on the How Dare You podcast. He's directed Warlock. Then movies like My Father the Hero, The Unfortunate Soul Man, where he met...
Is that what it's been retitled as? The Unfortunate Soul Man?
Most assuredly should be. Am I right? He, of course, met... I don't know if he met her, but he directed Jamie Lee Curtis before on Forever Young. And also...
I'm sure he met her in order to direct her.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm saying maybe they met before that.
You're right, yeah.
But also, favorite of the How Dare You podcast, he directed Lake Placid.
Yeah.
Fucking great movie.
And yet apparently the reason why he got this job is because he was directing the pilot for Dawson's Creek.
Yeah.
Not because he's the guy behind House or 2 Friday the 13th movies. Or
I think Kevin Williamson knew that he'd done that.
Yeah.
He just happened to be directing the pilot of Dawson's Creek and knew that
it's funny that that's the connection.
Yeah, that he knew Jamie Lee Curtis and he said, "Hey, what about this?"
But the director of Scream, the writer of Scream and the director of House have to come together over Dawson's Creek. It's a strange set of coincidences.
Incestuous Hollywood.
Right.
What do you think about this? 52% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Low.
Yeah.
Very low. Very low.
I think so too. Get that thing up
People
to
don't
70.
know what good storytelling is anymore.
It's upsetting.
That's my old man yells at cloud reading of that. People don't know good storytelling when it kicks them in the ass.
On a budget of $17 million.
Or editing.
Editing, well, we'll get to it, but budget of $17 million, an opening weekend of $16.1 million in the USA and the world, $55 million. You know, modest hit.
Yeah. I mean, we've already referred to it, but this was slated as a direct-to-video release,
Yeah.
so really, if it allows
If
you
anything,
to make
it
another
saves the
film,
franchise.
yeah.
No
If it
matter
allows
what
you to
Rob
make
Zombie
another-
says.
Well, we don't listen to what Rob Zombie says, and in this case, don't even acknowledge that he exists,
Not yet.
which is a world I'd like to live in.
Not yet.
Stop saying that.
All right, so we have, you know, all the big players in one way or another were coming back or supposed to be coming back.
Yeah.
One of the famous stories for this movie was that John Carpenter was supposed to come back, Deborah Hill.
Where have we heard that before?
Yeah. And of course, the most famous story was that John Carpenter was pissed at all the lost revenue over getting screwed over on all the other sequels. So he said, I'm happy to come back, give me $10 million to direct. And they said, no, thank you. And yet the movie still happens.
Yeah, Jamie, I mean, you know.
Like, mostly, yeah, I think because Jamie Lee Curtis wanted it to happen.
She did, yeah. And,
You know what they
She
did not
just-
listen to her about, though, that I think she was 100% right about?
what's that?
She wanted the poster to be the view between the stall doors in the bathroom where the
Ah.
shape is just looking back. I think that would have been a
Well-
great poster.
If you base it on how much that sequence has been stolen, it's obviously the key set piece of the movie.
Of the franchise.
Yeah, it's I think it's credit to her. She came back because she was convinced this was going to be the last one,
Right.
and that she could
She-
wrap up her
She
story.
should have known how wrong she was when they asked to film two different endings.
To be fair, they did. They I think everyone, including Steve Miner, was under the impression that ending would never be used. It was just to shut up Mustafa Akkad,
Yeah, that's true.
so they could do what they wanted to do, which was to kill off Michael Myers. That's not this movie's problem. Okay?
Yeah.
This movie did that.
Absolutely.
It went there, and it deserves all the credit for doing
Right.
it.
How many times have we talked about big swings? Well, literally a big swing in this movie.
Literally a big swing of an axe. Yes.
And, you know, so, I mean, as always, let's start at the beginning. What do you think of, you know, we've got some imbasses. We've got a cold open.
Well, we've got
We've got,
we got a greatest hits montage.
yeah.
Right, so we've got Mr. Sandman over the logo, a knife in a pumpkin. You know, the Halloween branded font.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's sound or vision, and you know, this is one of the more subtle ways in which this movie is economical, right? It's got a running time of an hour and 20 minutes. So even when it does imbasses, it does them in a remarkably
Efficient way. Yeah.
and clipped
You know, it's
way.
one of my favorite parts.
It's very satisfying.
You know,
It's like you don't feel like you need anything
Right.
else.
and you know what was really satisfying? Listening to Sandman, Mr. Sandman, and then having that movie cut out.
Halloween 2. Yeah.
Or not movie, having that music cut out the second Marion gets to her porch and sees the knocked out porch light. I really like that.
I suppose it's given that it is not a given at this point that we are not following on from Curse of Michael Myers. It's important to give us a sense of where we're picking up from, which is Halloween 2.
But I was going to say it. Yeah, it's also this movie chooses to do something different from something the same and different from 2018, which is excise some of the canon but keep one sequel.
Yeah, and if you were to retake, so I don't know. Again, this is something where I may be on an island out on my own, and I understand that effectively we've erased Halloween 4 to Curse from the timeline. Well, let's just take Halloween 3 as read.
What are you talking? You don't get to not excise 3.
It's a different kind of exorcism. And yet, I mean, I know that behind the scenes, there were drafts of the script written that included those movies in canon.
As a book report.
And yet, I don't think necessarily there's anything in the film that disproves the existence of the events of those movies in the way that people have written about these movies thinks it does.
The only pushback I'll give on that is if...
It just doesn't say anything about them.
If Laurie Strode / Carrie Tate didn't have a child, I'd go with you on that one. A child in this movie.
Yeah, and as far as that's the weird thing. Like, as far as the writers were concerned, they just gradually redrafted it to the point where everything to do with Jamie Lloyd was gone.
Right.
But they never stated it definitively. So as a viewer, you can keep that in your mind if you want to.
And
as an optional canon.
You could.
Again, another reason why this movie is better than Halloween 2018.
And Jamie Lee Curtis is doing good enough acting to make you think there's something going on underneath there, that she's willing to share something, but not everything, to Anna
because
Markin.
She faked her death in a car accident, which is also the story we're told in Halloween 4.
Right.
So it's a stretch, but it's one that your imagination can make, and it's not closed off for, it's not closed off in a way that you can keep the canon in mind in a way that Halloween 2018 will simply not.
It won't allow you. That's true.
I don't know how we got there. I like that it starts on October 29th.
Yeah. And
not in Haddonfield.
Yes, correct.
This really is a remake of Halloween 3.
But you're,
in that sense.
You're also seeing some other things. I mean, you definitely feel that you're in a world in which Scream has happened. You can feel its presence throughout this whole movie. Not that that's a negative. I don't
think it's as intrusive as some people have portrayed it as. I mean, it's a metatextual film. But that's... And yes, Scream...
But even the Scream movies make an appearance.
Well, not even Scream. It's Scream 2, and it's the movie within the movie in Scream 2. So that says to me more... That's more a statement about how metatextual this movie is. Less that it is a Scream ripoff.
Sure. But it works. What I do like in this cold open is... One, you have a character that fans from the series should recognize.
Yeah.
So you have Marion, the nurse. But the movie itself is doing things, working against tropes that come in other horror series.
I absolutely agree.
We cut the music, and then we don't have music come back. I love when she's walking around the house to complete and total silence. Also, every time she feels like something's up or weird, she doesn't go investigate further. She gets the fuck out of the house. She does the thing that we always want people in horror movies to do. Not that it works out for her. But I like that this movie makes those choices. I think, that's working against type in a way that's interesting to me.
I think this cold open is pretty much perfect.
Yeah. But it's also speaking to the times because we got Joseph Gordon-Levitt making an appearance, and he's right in the middle of a Third Rock from the Sun run.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not the it actor that we know him to become a little bit later, but he's a known entity. And
this is why it feels like, like a sincere, earnest, genuine tribute to the original Halloween, which it introduced Jamie Lee Curtis to the world as a youth star.
Yeah.
And with both Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Josh Hartnett here,
Michelle
we're clearly
Williams.
doing the same thing. So, Michelle Williams. And so it has the fidelity to the project of Halloween, not just the tropes of Halloween.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like that elevates it slightly. Obviously, Marion coming back, a legacy character and actor to start the movie, is an imbas. She's played the same character in 3 different timelines of the movie by the end of this. But she's just revisited in a very satisfying way. I love the cigarette dangling out of her mouth.
Yeah.
And dare I say it, when this movie pulls that legacy card, or even just the sort of cinematic celebrity card later with Janet Leigh, they actually feel like real characters in this world. They don't feel like just the actors, and that simply doesn't happen.
The movie will make
Halloween
small
Kills.
choices to ensure that happens. When Adam Arkin takes Jamie Lee Curtis into her office because he needs a fix of kissing, but when he walks out of the office, Janet Leigh is standing there like a stern nursemaid, like Nurse Ratched, disapproving.
And that scene is fascinating on a metatextual level because you've got 2 famous kids of famous actors,
right?
And one of
their parents in the room. To
and,
speak nothing of Cars from Psycho.
I think which they really had to hunt down. And pretty much the only negative thing I have to say about this scene is the Hellraiser on the porch.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a Hellraiser doll on the porch, and that's the kind of Weinstein's trying to create an expanded universe of their properties. But speaking of crossovers that really do work, I love the fact that it's a Jason hockey mask.
Yes, yeah.
That shows me that the film is interested in having fun at its own expense and at the expense of its fandom.
Absolutely, right.
And a lot, each horror franchise sometimes gets very insular, right, in its own fandom. Sure. So it's really interesting when it decides to comment on the wider horror
genre.
This is a really fun way to do that. Because it's the elephant in the room, right? That like other franchises of, there are other franchises
in the
available,
world.
Right?
Right.
And when Marion says, they're all dead, like everyone, again, you're dealing with the contradictions of having an intergenerational franchise, and this is something 20 years in that the series has to deal with.
Right.
It's now multi-generational, and that has to be reflected on screen, and I think this film does a really good job of that. Without any sense of inauthenticity from the new cast members.
Not at all. And one particular moment that I think stands out in a way that's, very satisfying for me, but I'll get there. I mean, it's a small thing, but a thing that the mechanics of it, I think, work great.
And this is,
But this is when we get our Donald Pleasant stunt voice.
Yeah. I mean, I also like the fact that, Marion is kind of badass in how she fights off Michael. Mm-hmm. But the flip side of that is we have a more vulnerable Michael, and I think that we keep doubling down on that. We see someone who's beatable, someone who is not this
supernatural,
superhuman, invincible superhuman, which is, the movie doesn't play that card, and it's kind of quite satisfying. I love these cops as well.
Yeah, right.
It's a great line. We hit the daily double here.
Yeah, yeah.
And that they're pure exposition, right? They're just filling in the gaps.
No, yeah, right. But you know,
it works. It works for me totally.
The whole thing works for me because she, like I said earlier, she leaves the house. She goes to Joseph Gordon-Levitt's house. He's got the hockey, the skate in his face.
Yeah.
And like you said, Marion is finding a way to fight back against Michael, and you have that thing in horror movies where, a lot of times in that moment in a horror movie, the person is not doing or saying what they should in the moment.
Yeah.
The movie kind of misses the mark, but the cops walk in just in the time. The only thing I'll push back on a little bit is when she smashes the window, they'd probably hear that, but we'll cover it by the fact that they were inside the house.
Mm-hmm.
And
I love speaking. Now it's a multi-generational saga. I really like how they use the veteran cop to remind us that Michael is now like a middle-aged man, but in a really simple way.
I like it. I love it when he says, he'd be the same age I am.
Yeah.
How old are you telling me I am, asshole?
It's efficient. It's efficient storytelling and exposition. And it, the whole cold open, it resets the franchise in a way that you need. Mm-hmm. It does it quickly,
like everything else in this movie.
But we're not starved for information, right? We're like
give just enough,
just enough that we need to restart. Yeah. So I think it's pretty much perfect. I also like it takes on some of the kind of cliches and expectations of the Halloween franchise, and the idea that it's Michael is kind of a Puritan killer.
Yeah.
That he punishes transgressions, and so as soon as Joseph Gordon-Levitt steals that beer from the fridge,
he's fucked. Yeah.
He's fucked, and I think that's a really nice way of doing it. And also, he feels like a character out of Friday the 13th more than he does a character from Halloween.
That's interesting.
But the difference is the movie knows it. Mm-hmm. Because he's wearing a hockey mask the entire time.
But I also like, I like the fact that he checks out her house. He demolishes her pan holder above the island. And I love that he comes out, Marion's so worried about what might be in her house that she doesn't hear what the audience hears, which is the gentle clinking of beer bottles in his pockets. Yes. And the offhanded remark of, oh yeah, you also got, you messed up your kitchen pretty good. Just walking off and, so those...
It's fun,
It's just fun,
It's fun, and, we have these minor characters who developed not in a hysterical way, but in a fun way.
Yeah, right.
Then they're not comically heightened, they're just fun to watch and be around.
Absolutely.
And that's a distinction once again that Halloween Kills does not understand.
I imagine you'll be saying that a lot.
But sorry, I'll just stop saying it. Just take it as read. The titles definitely, I was like, well, this is definitely post Usual Suspects.
Right. Yeah.
And a total imbas, obviously. Photos,
maps,
the films in newspapers,
drawings.
But again,
but there's nothing that doesn't
work. The most efficient way, the most efficient way. And we can give you this information.
Well, I want to ask you more than anything. Generally speaking, like, what do you think? I mean, there's different music in the movie overall, but the Halloween theme. It's the same but different. And it feels updated in a way that feels of the time, but not but when you watch it now, it doesn't feel stuck in that time. Like, I really like it. I kind of like this version of the Halloween theme within this movie. I think it works. I think it all works really well. And I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the music in the film proper. When we get to the credits, we got to talk about Creed.
Well, there's other stuff to talk about then. Yeah. Yes, I understand.
Yeah. But even that, I mean, I don't know if Creed is ever played in the film, but Creed like bands are, and I think, well, that's just a representation of what they're listening to at the time. You know.
And I think the characters
it's,
are
it's
listening
that generation.
to...
It's the fault of that generation. It's
Yeah,
not
exactly,
the fault
right,
of the movie
right.
for representing the awful music that people listen to.
That's good. Oh, that's good. Well, and of course, when we get out of our opening credits, as we focus in on the pencil drawing of Michael Myers' eyes, we're going to go right into a dream sequence. And you were just talking about the amount of exposition given in this cold open. And there's an awful lot of exposition given in this dream sequence.
Yeah, and you know, you would normally, well, not you particularly, but we would normally scoff at dream sequences being used in this fashion. But again, you know, this is how you account for 20 years when you're making a movie that's under 90 minutes.
Exactly.
You gotta cut corners. So if dream sequence is the fastest way to get this information across, let's do it. Let's go. I'm on board.
We find out where it's going to take place. We find out her new name, that she has a son.
Yeah.
We know
she's got PTSD.
Exactly, PTSD.
I mean,
if you blink, you're going to miss the scar on her arm because you're not going to see it in the whole rest of the movie. The scar given to her, in the first movie when Michael tries to stab her.
Oh, interesting. That's good attention to detail.
Yeah, it's on her arm when she wakes up screaming, and John has to get her murder pills. Sorry, her nightmare pills. It's Stallone in Rambo who has murder pills. I'll say these are her nightmare pills.
Murder pill. So, and this goes back to, I think, when we did Final Destination, I talked about how horror movies are easier to make sequels of because you can continue the story of the final girl. You have this built-in trope that you can, and this movie is really going to town on that idea. You know, she's the idea of the final girl who's become like a lifetime trauma victim.
Right.
And this is I think a really good use of this, and it's done so purposefully and definitively here. I can't believe that Halloween had the balls to just steal it outright.
Again, I'm going to say that in their minds, I think they were doing something different. But
yeah, in my mind, I'm often doing something different from what I'm actually doing. I tell you, here's some, in the column of originality, the same in the column of originality.
This one gets
Summer Glen, California.
Yeah.
I mean, we've never left Illinois
ever.
Except let's not talk about Halloween 3. If only because we have talked about it.
We know that these movies don't take place in that world because they're watching them on TV.
But the movie is smart enough to know that we're gonna be weirded out by beginning in the middle of California. So we've got this cold open which takes place in Illinois. Yeah. But it's not Haddonfield because we don't want to go back to Haddonfield. Right. So these are all
good choices.
Smart choices. One after the other. So
all right.
It's a good balance of familiar and new.
Agree, yeah.
Which is what you want from any sequel.
Of course.
So
we're off to a good start. Why don't we
I think so, yes.
Why don't we take a break?
Yeah.
All right.
And we'll
come back and we'll get into not the meat of the story,
but from Dad.
Yeah. We'll get into learning about new characters and where our old characters are.
We'll efficiently build an interim storyline.
We'll be right back.
Asterisk, they don't do this in Halloween.
You're just trying to sully my arguments before I could even get to them. Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard.
She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing Halloween H20, the chemical formula sequel from 1998. Directed by Steve Miner. I stole that joke from Tom, everyone.
You don't need to credit me.
You deserve all the credit.
You steal all your jokes. From your brain where you come up with them.
It was a good one. All right. So we've met Carrie Tate / Laurie Strode. Let me ask you this. What do you think of the choice? Because in this moment, John has to comfort Mom. She's waking up out of a night terror.
Yeah.
But you learn right away that everything that she's hiding from the rest of the world, she's not hiding from her son.
Yeah.
I like that.
I like that too. I mean, I don't want to hop on about efficient storytelling, but immediately cuts out that scene where she has to tell him what's going on.
Right.
I think it's done for nobler reasons than that, but still.
Yeah.
It helps. No, I mean, why beat about the bush,
It just, to me, it seems like the
she
sort
wouldn't
of
be
thing...
able to hide it from him, right?
Yeah,
she wouldn't be able
it
to
seems
hide...
to me like the sort of thing a movie like this would generally do. Have that character hide it from her son and have to have the moment where she has to tell him later.
Yeah.
Whereas we get that with the boyfriend, so why do it twice?
Exactly. Why do it twice? It's a question I'll be asking many times over in this series.
Now wait. So you're accusing 2018.
I didn't say anything.
You've been saying, though, over and over again. You're accusing 2018 of stealing things wholesale. Now, what's the difference? Because this movie has some of that, too.
Yeah.
Does it bother you as much in this movie as it does in that movie? Or is it because it's less...
What are you talking about?
Well, let's say Michelle Williams looking out the window and seeing Michael Myers. So we're taking directly from the original Halloween. Just like Laurie looked out the window.
Well, my beef is that, pretending... But Halloween 2018 keeps the original in canon. As this does.
Yeah.
But it gets most of its content from sequels that it refuses to acknowledge.
So that's the beef. But you don't think there's anything to the argument that despite the fact that they wanted to clean up the storyline, I guess is the way they'd say it, that they still... It's not that they have a lack of respect. That's why these things are in that 2018, because they like those moments. Like you can't do an homage to the other movies.
But I just don't understand. I don't understand how you can give with one hand and take with the other.
All right.
Like that. But I mean, I don't think it's particularly bad here, isn't it?
No, yeah, like I said, there's not a lot of it. I'm just saying
it's a lot. It's enough of a, and it's established as a meta movie, and I think part of the reason for that is so that everything has this double meaning. Mm-hmm. It's referring both to what's going on in the fictional universe versus the cultural legacy of Halloween.
Okay.
So, much later on we'll get to a closet and Jamie Lee Curtis would go, "Oh fuck."
Yeah.
And that's just speaking directly to an audience who know what's coming.
Yeah.
And what know the trope. So I think with that form of address that goes on here, it's a perfectly acceptable thing to do.
Okay. Let me ask you this, though, because we have not given any play in the ranking or in our first segment. We know that I personally am invested in Mask Watch.
Oh yeah, let's mask watch.
So,
what's Mike's mask?
Well, can I ask you
musings.
first of all?
Mike's mask musings.
MMM. It's a different logo than Haddonfield Memorial Hospital. Can I ask you this? Did you notice that there seemed to be a much better and good-looking mask in the cold open than there is in the rest of the movie, or am I crazy?
I don't think you're crazy. Let me see what I... Keep talking.
I'm just saying, when this movie starts, I look at the mask and I think to myself, that looks quite good. And then we get to California and the mask goes to shit.
I have no notes about the mask in the cold open and lots for the rest of the film. So
that proves my point,
right.
I think.
I think it did tacitly. It proves your point.
I think it's like DNA evidence.
Let's not go crazy.
Who but Tom Stewart would write down a mask note if he was noticing something wrong with the mask? Who else but Tom Stewart would be writing those notes?
I mean, to me, what stands out about it is how featureless it is, and how much that lack of features makes it look even more like William Shatner. Those are my two big observations about the mask. I mean, it's paper thin. Am I wrong?
I don't think so.
It looks like it doesn't look like a mask. It looks like someone's rolled up some A4.
So let me ask you this too,
two eyes in it.
Because my biggest drawback for this movie and my biggest complaint for the movie, putting the mask aside for now, would be, because I'll tell you the one thing that I do like about the 2018 and even, I guess, Halloween Kills, the performance of the actors playing Michael Myers.
Yeah, I mean...
the performance in this movie is, for me, particularly... I'm going to say bad.
It's not great.
You know?
It
makes a real difference.
It does.
When you have somebody great in that jumper with even a bad mask, it makes a difference.
Well, Andy has a bad mask.
It doesn't help. Yeah.
So, it's interesting because it goes again. So they establish Michael as a character in a way that's more plausible and credible than it has been in the past,
right?
And will be in the future. But the realism doesn't extend to the actual physical portrayal of the character.
Yeah.
Because you look at him, you go, he looks 20 years younger than when we last saw him, not 20 years older.
Yes. But he also looks...
He's also a stick.
Oh, see, I don't think so. I think he's...
No?
I think he's a little hunched in moments.
If you told me that was Jamie Lee Curtis with a mask on, I would agree.
There's a moment at the end of this movie when she hits him with the car.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think before that, when she applies the brakes and he flops through the windshield. He gets up. I don't even know, like Beavis or Butthead. like that's what it looks like to me. Where
okay, yeah.
To me, it looks almost comedic, as though he's this close to going.
I really wish he had now. What do you think about... Okay, so again, my only pushback to this, you're absolutely right, and you are...
Thank you.
You're the mask meister.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to challenge you on that. Is that what about the eye acting in the final scene?
Okay.
That's pretty. I mean, obviously the next movie completely ruins that.
Right.
But if you didn't know that it ruined it,
it's the one moment where
it's very compelling acting.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah. No, I'll agree with that.
And I think part of the reason
it's not, there are moments where I want to say it's enough to save everything else, but it's not really, because the
rest
movie,
of it's kind of, he's just, to me, it's just miscasting. It's like, and I wonder whether, when you see him and Jamie Lee Curtis fighting, it's like, yeah, they look like brother and sister. But because the weird thing about this movie is that it doubles down on the sibling connection between the two.
Sure.
And I think the movie is crafted around that in a way that other movies aren't. Other Halloween movies aren't necessarily. And some, are almost the opposite of that. Want there to be no connection between them.
Mm-hmm.
So, but on the whole, I think, it's pretty hopeless.
Because I just think of...
But he's not in a lot of he's not in a lot of a movie. I like how it's written. I don't like how it's performed most of the time. But I like the way that the character is written.
Yeah.
In terms of what he does within the film. But when you actually see him doing it, it's quite underwhelming.
All right. Well, I'm glad we're on the same page.
I mean, he's your classic sneaky Michael Myers.
Mm-hmm.
He's also, as we said, a little bit more vulnerable than
mm-hmm.
some of the other Michael Myers that we've seen. And the sense of maybe even too much of the child Michael Myers is there.
Mm.
The point where he doesn't seem like a man who is like 40.
That might be part of it. That might be a choice the actor was making that does not work.
But it's, again, it's about degree, isn't it? Like, I'm going to say something nasty about 2018 now.
Go ahead.
But he's too much of an old man in that. And this one, he's too much of a child. So there's somewhere in between that works better. If you ask me which I prefer, obviously this one. Because it makes sense within the sibling, within the characterization of Michael Myers as an overgrown child. Anyway.
I'm going to disagree on that one.
Okay.
I like the performance.
No, I don't think it's successful in representing that, but I think that's
okay
in terms of what he's doing in the film.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's there's a lot of hide and go seek.
Yeah. Well, and within the scope of our story, we know that Laurie has this nightmare. We have kind of I think this is the clunkiest part of the movie's dialogue. Not that it's terrible, but it's a little clunky when John is saying things like, today is the day, and it's the day you're going to realize that you're overbearing, and you're this, and you're that. And he gets the turning 17 birthday card 2 months late from his dad.
What's wrong with that?
That's not bad. Sorry. Just that dialogue part to me is a little clunky.
Okay.
Not terrible, but
I didn't get it. And it's a
to me that's the it felt very teen drama in a way.
Well, this is the director of the pilot of Dawson's Creek.
I understand.
No, I mean, I like that scene. I think it's a really well done version of the intergenerational tension. Not passing on your shit to your children.
I literally just wish that there was a little bit better dialogue for the actors to be saying.
Okay.
But with this birthday card, we have a great setup.
We do. And it's like, this is the late 90s versus the late 70s, so we're kind of normalizing broken families.
Yeah, right.
We assume that the neighborhood in Haddonfield in 78 is basically all nuclear families, with maybe one or two exceptions.
Sure.
Here it seems like the norm is, John comes from a broken home, Molly comes from a broken home, so that's like two out of the four
that we know of.
That we know of, yeah. And just, I guess as well, like, the teenagers being more sexually free and open than the previous generation.
Well,
like, they talk about going, it's going to be
Laurie's
a
friends
orgy.
were pretty, at least one of them were pretty liberated.
Okay, fair enough.
Not that I don't get what you're saying, but I get it in the sense of how they're willing to talk about it without doing it as sort of a main part of their lives,
Yeah.
Where it's sort of it's an in-joke between the two couples.
It's really, that's really interesting. And I guess the other distinction is that they're okay joking about it in front of adults.
You
never get a sense of that.
That's what I was just going to say, because they're also, it's like they're at a meeting, but they don't mind, they're around others. Adam Arkin's right behind them, could be listening. They don't give a shit.
He's saying things that would get most...
Yeah, a little later he's going to be
fired.
saying things that would absolutely get him fired today.
Well, here's something to bolster your argument about this movie stealing from sequels it won't acknowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least not definitively acknowledge. Michael's on the road again.
Yeah.
Just like in 4.
Yeah. I don't know that the movie thinks it's just like 4, though.
No, I don't either. I was just trying to throw you a bone.
I think they think they're doing their own thing, and also I really like that scene.
This is such a good set piece.
Yeah.
And clearly, everyone who saw this film
thought so as well.
Immediately wanted to imitate it. Because this rest stop scene we've seen in both Rob Zombie's version and in the David Gordon Green version, reinvented in their own disgusting new ways. But it's just you just sort of, I don't know, this hasn't happened before in the franchise, right? This isn't a pull from anything that's happened before.
No.
Which makes it even more remarkable.
Yeah.
It's just like, because it feels like Michael's been doing this.
It feels like his shtick.
Yeah, but it's the first time we've seen it.
But only because of what's come after it.
And also, again, the other interesting characterization of Michael is that he's sort of killing only when necessary.
Yeah, right.
So...
Well, I have always liked that, too.
Yeah.
In any Halloween movie, I like it when it's not a given that Michael's going to kill everybody.
That's really strong here.
Yeah.
It's like he's laser focused on his task.
Right. I got to get on the road.
He's got to get on the road.
I'm trying to get from fucking Illinois to California in 2 days.
It's like George Costanza, he needs to make good time. And he will show mercy to those he does not need to kill.
Right.
It's a really interesting way to establish that character.
But also
but
what I also like about it is there's also this looming sense of what that's going to do to that mother long after, you know what I mean?
Right, which is
she's going to see on the news what happened at that school within 2 days' time.
It's a valuable lesson to people making Halloween movies, is that you don't have to go as far as killing every single time to have the same impact on the characters. Some of the most interesting characters in the series are the ones who are not killed, but other people around them are killed, and the effect that it has on them. Yeah. I love how we sort of manufacture a haunted house out of the boarding school by this Yosemite trip.
It's amazing.
Which is taking place on Halloween.
And it
makes
wasn't,
absolutely no sense.
If memory serves, it was
leaving the school empty.
Empty, exactly. Because originally it was going to be a dance at the school, wasn't it?
Sorry?
Originally it was going to be a dance at the school, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so when you get rid of that and everybody just leaves, you're right. You have this amazing haunted house quality to an entire school that, again, efficient.
Efficient and this is, I guess these are
and
the
also
two
a better
watchwords.
choice.
Efficient and a better choice, because I have the, like, for the rest of the films, I have the note again and again, like, every time we go to a party in Halloween, it feels like the wrong choice made purely out of desperation.
Right.
And that's going back to, like, you know, previous Halloween films
Sure.
as well. This is where we get Janet Leigh.
Yeah.
Which, you know, we've already kind of talked about. Obviously, it's intertextual casting. Jamie Lee Curtis's mother, Marion Crane in Psycho. Part of the reason why Jamie Lee Curtis was cast in the first place is because she is the daughter of Marion Crane from Psycho.
Yeah, right.
So it's coded with this intertextual meaning that, you know, if you're a cinephile,
It's intertextual writ large.
Yeah.
And they're going to take it further. I mean, we already mentioned it, but we have the car from Psycho. That's what Janet Leigh is driving. She's
her last performance as well.
And it's a great performance. My note is
she's so good.
Yeah, my note is it's nice to see Janet Leigh doing great acting.
And that's, you know, it's what and she's a defined.
But in addition, we have Sheriff Brackett's line from the original Halloween, everyone's entitled to one good scare.
Yeah.
I like it here more than Sheriff Brackett saying again in fucking Halloween Kills.
Which doesn't make sense, and yet it does. It sometimes shows you should resist the urge to do the obvious sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, and she's playing a real character with a defined personality.
Absolutely.
But also,
right.
you know, she's not the only one in this building, because we also meet Will, played by Adam Arkin. Who is in his own way kind of a Loomis surrogate.
Yeah, I think so too.
You know, he's like a...
Because even though he's a counselor, it feels like he's some sort of psychologist, you know, he says that...
Yeah.
He's got that moment at lunch where he says, I believe that anybody could come back.
Yes.
So if he feels like you could bring somebody back, in saying that, he feels, you know, he's got some kind of psychology background working for him.
Well,
there.
I mean, he wasn't originally written as a guidance counselor. He was a English teacher, I think.
Yeah, I believe
or
so.
Or a math teacher. So obviously they're conscious of him being a psychologist. But it's really interesting. Jamie Lee Curtis said that one of the things she liked about the script for this movie is that Loomis wasn't there, but there was no Loomis surrogate. And it's actually even more sophisticated than that. There is a Loomis surrogate,
right,
but he goes under the radar because he just feels like a real character who should be there.
Right.
And then there's LL Cool J, which is absolutely in-the-moment casting.
That
you would
works.
never pick this guy for this role in any other historical context. He's also playing against type as a security guard, a writer, and a henpecked pushover. LL Cool J strikes me as none of these things. This is the masterstroke bit of casting of this movie.
Absolutely. 100%. And
the odds are stacked against this working. All the odds.
Right. Well, and the thing that's interesting to me is that, you know, LL Cool J, this isn't his first role. I mean, I was seeing him as early. I remember him in 1991 with The Hard Way.
Yeah.
James Woods and Michael J. Fox. Now, what's interesting to me is that I think he's really fun and good in that movie too. He's got a great standout line talking with Michael J. Fox. But in this movie, I think what we're witnessing is he's a good actor.
Yeah, because he has to act. He can't rely on his persona.
Exactly.
At any point, because it's nothing like the LL Cool J that we know.
Exactly.
But, you know, but also if you kind of... You can sort of observe that and go, oh, this guy's doing a really good piece of acting because he's acting against type. But when you get to the point where he's such a good character, the writers can't even bring themselves to kill him off.
Right.
When he clearly dies.
When he should, yeah.
Because they know the audience is going to react badly to this guy dying. because we're invested in him. Again, against all the odds. In any other movie would be an awful, shoehorned in CD storyline.
Right.
Is actually really compelling, and it has its own little arc.
It has a great arc. It has a great arc. It's so good.
He discovers he should be writing romantic thrillers instead of pure romances. Now that he's experienced being knocked over the head by, being shot by a guy
grazed by the head.
Actually, Michael Myers doesn't do as much to him as Will does.
That's true.
So I think they possibly may have learned the wrong lesson from casting LL Cool J.
They absolutely did.
And how well it went. But it's worth it.
It's worth it to have this movie and his performance, absolutely. But the one thing I do want to say about LL Cool J, though, is, we've talked before on this podcast, there's always, the most important thing is casting. When you get the casting right, so much of everything else falls into place. And that can be seen so evidently between this movie and the movie that comes after it.
Yes.
And, Busta Rhymes, whatever, he gives a little flavor, but it's not this, because it's not organic.
No. Busta Rhymes gives the performance that you would expect LL Cool J would give.
Right.
But
my note is he has such a natural presence.
Yeah.
And it just works so well in this film. Yeah.
It's a really strong ensemble.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not, they're not wasted.
Yeah.
Which is important.
Now, within our narrative, John's going to sneak off campus. And
just like his sneaky uncle.
Yeah. Yeah. And Laurie / Carrie is, we're gonna, is it the first time we're kind of seeing her alcoholism rearing its ugly head?
Yeah. It's, John has said that she's a functional alcoholic.
Yeah, he says that.
And then, we see her at lunch
But he says that after we see it.
Oh, that's right, he does. Yes. Yeah. This is where we get the alcoholism. But
I think that's a rather interesting bit.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I always thought there was something to be said in 2018 for just how much trauma can affect you. But here it's still more interesting to me.
Yeah, it's way more interesting because, she's holding down a job.
Yeah.
She's found a way to incorporate it into her life, and it's kind of seasonal, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a seasonal disorder because it's based around Halloween.
Yeah. Do you think that has something to do with the time too, though? 1998 is still the time where, hey, you can still have fun with the alcoholics.
I don't know. That waiter seems pretty.
Yeah, right.
That if for someone who presumably sees alcoholism all the time, to raise an eyebrow, it must be in excess of.
But
the cultural
it's
norm.
funny that the tone of it seems to be focused way less on her trauma, say, than the restaurant scene does in 2018.
That's kind of interesting. Like, yeah, it's. I don't know if it was a specific callback, but of course, in 2018's version, she grabs whatever alcohol is at the table and just like
chugs it,
downs it in front of everyone. And here it's very carefully placed. It's like while he's in the bathroom.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna have another glass of wine, and he won't know it's the second glass. He'll just think I'm drinking the same glass. Yeah. And I actually think that's how alcoholism works. World.
Yes, exactly right.
Versus like. It's not like a hungry dog needs like a thirsty dog kind of thing.
Right.
So I don't. Yeah, I kind of like it. I think it helps Jamie Lee Curtis as well because she's not lurching into melodrama. in the way that 2018 makes her do.
All right.
You'll have been happy to have seen the dumb waiter riffing on the laundry chute from Halloween 5. Your favorite of the Halloween movies. Again, not in canon, but clearly enough in the memory of viewers that we're able to have a set piece alluding to it.
Yeah.
What do you think about... Here's a question. What do you think about the role of jump scares in this film?
They feel more obligatory.
100% agree.
Yeah.
They're kind of routinized in a way that makes you feel numb to them after a while. And I think
the kids banging into the window.
Yeah. Oh, there was just like so many in succession.
Yeah, right.
Also in such a short film.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And even, you know, with 30 minutes to go when Michael Myers has returned, we're still doing jump scares.
One of them I quite like, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it is just the way in which they're organized. And this is, you know, so it's great to have a movie that is an hour and 20 minutes, but also have questions about how you actually use your runtime. Because it's very late on in the film when you get to the kills.
Yeah, right.
And we're still doing jump scares, and the kills aren't as impressive as you would necessarily hope them to be.
That's impressive.
Also, the fact, I mean, you made reference to it that they cut out, you know, a detective pursuing Michael's storyline, which sounds terrible until you find out that Charles S. Dutton was cast as the cop. And then you're sort of like, oh, I kind of would like to have seen that. But
I'll tell you what else I quite like, though, is the argument between her and John outside of the restaurant.
Yeah.
That felt very organic, and...
I mean, she's a better shouter than he is.
Absolutely.
But maybe in 20 years' time, he'll be as good as she is at shouting.
Right.
But yeah, I
she's particularly good in that moment.
Yeah.
You know, we've been talking about the efficiency of this film. I like that she starts it off by yelling the word fuck, which he quietly and sheepishly says, I'm not very comfortable hearing you say that word. And she, you know, at this almost the same tenor of voice is saying, then don't put me in the position, John.
Yeah.
And there are moments in this movie in which I really can see the 17-year-old Laurie Strode within the performance of, you know, a 40-year-old Laurie Strode. And I don't know, there's just something about it that I just love that. And I don't know if it's more accidental or completely
I don't think
part
it is.
of Jamie Lee Curtis's plan, but or something she worked in conjunction with Steve Miner. But it works in a way that I think is very satisfying.
And also, not putting too much on it, not creating a granddaughter character who is solely there to remind you of a young Laurie Strode. Like, it's...
Yeah.
They don't make Josh Hartnett like a surrogate for young Laurie. They just let you see young Laurie in, 20 years later Laurie.
Yeah.
It's just more interesting as a dynamic.
Well, why don't we take another break?
Sure.
Then we'll come back and Michael's going to really get down to business.
Yeah, Michael Myers is going to come into this Halloween film. Okay, before we go, What do you think about that?
I think it works just fine.
I agree. I think
this does.
I think if you go back and watch the original
Halloween, I was
Halloween,
going to say.
I think you'll find that's kind of how it goes.
Yes. You have a good hour of building character, giving the audience the information they need, little moments of, ooh, that's scary, which this movie has. I mean, you have the cold open, you have the bathroom, you've got plenty. Michael staring in the window that Michelle Williams is staring out of, you've got all of that. And you have an hour of that, and then a half hour of unrelenting Michael Myers. And that, I think that's what these movies, it's kind of when they're at their best.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
We're back once again, everyone. Tom and I are here, finishing up with our favorite in the latter part of the Halloween series, Halloween H20. 20 years later. 20 years later. 20 years later. Directed by Steve Miner. 52%. That's a bunch of horse shit.
It is, yeah. The more I talk about this, the better crafted this movie seems.
Yeah, I think so too. Do you think it's no, because that doesn't even make sense for at the time. I was gonna say, do you think in retrospect people don't like the look of it looking so 90s, like so into a Dawson's Creek / Scream mold?
I think by having it at the boarding school, they avoid all that. I think they avoid some of the excesses of that even.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't feel like it plays into the youth culture of the time particularly, because they're all just school kids. You know, it could be
right.
like it looks the same as it did in Dead Poets Society, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
right.
just like the 50s.
Yeah.
So I think that was actually a really smart choice, even though it seems to come out of left field that it's set in this boarding school.
No, I've always really liked the choice as well.
Yeah. I think it covers a multitude of sins that prevent it from feeling too dated.
Mm-hmm. And of course,
and, for want of a better word, timeless.
Yeah. Of course, within our story, we're going to get a kind of a chunk of information. I mean, John gets caught out of school. I love the moment, by the way. I think... I mean, I'm always a sucker for small moments.
Yeah, me too.
But to me, one of Josh Hartnett's best acting moments is that sheepish look he gives to LL Cool J, like, sorry I got caught.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yes, this is very good, isn't it? Everyone's relationship to each other is kind
clearly
of nicely
defined.
Judged. Yeah. Even though it obviously has the mother-daughter subtext, you also know what the relationship between Laurie and Norma is.
Yeah.
Like, aside from all the kind of psycho-ness of it.
Right. I mean, she even
Like,
has a
it's like-
line. Janet Leigh has a
Because she's the school secretary, right?
Yeah.
I mean...
But she has a
and
line that says, if I could be maternal for a moment.
Yeah, for sure. But it's more, as soon as she arrives, she slams the door in her face. And that's hilarious because that's her mother.
Yeah.
But it's also hilarious because she generally doesn't want her to see... her making out with the guidance counselor,
Right.
because she's the school secretary. She's probably going to tell everyone.
Who says he needs a fix.
Yeah. And there, and her relationship with Will is interesting too.
I go back and forth on that relationship just because in the sense there are moments that I find really interesting when they're at lunch. She is trying to say things to him that she's never clearly said before, that she's not handling things well, and I presume because he's got some kind of psychology background, he just simply says, I know.
Yeah.
But all of those things are also warning signs about what might not work in a relationship, which he seems to ignore completely.
I mean, the movie certainly punishes him for his transgressions,
That's true.
if you want to see it that way.
Yeah.
He nearly murders someone accidentally and then gets polished off himself.
But we're gonna see all of our teenagers that matter, our quartet. They're gonna wiggle their way out out of going to Yosemite,
Yeah.
and Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode is gonna be there with Will. They're gonna have a date, and
Yeah.
he might not make the best choice of bringing a pumpkin and saying, let's do this right, but you'll notice later they did carve that fucking thing.
Oh, well, there you go. What do you think about Michael's in-world celebrity?
It's always struck me that it makes sense.
Do you think
because it's on a level of like a
do you
Ted
really
Bundy?
think there's a 60 minutes on Dr. Loomis?
Yeah.
Do you think it's worthy of a 60 minutes segment?
I would buy that.
I mean, I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
If someone wants to make it from clips of Halloween, go for it.
I mean, maybe that's a step too far, but if you had a doctor who was intimately connected with Jeffrey Dahmer for
Nightline's the show for him.
most of his life, yeah.
Nightline is the show for Loomis, not 60 minutes. Also, the other big hurdle is, and again, this just really does feel like deja vu. So in this timeline,
Mm-hmm.
Michael still burned to death in.
Yeah, so
In the hospital.
that's the other
And
thing.
there's like no way around that.
They don't do anything that Halloween 4 does. No wrapping on the head, no scarred hands at least. And there are so many moments where he's walking around and they're just showing his hands.
And they can't even come up with a good reason why he's still alive.
Yeah.
Nor do they bother. And I just think it's funny that it's like, oh, we're back here again, are we?
You get in the middle of that fight, actually, you get a little, didn't you say you saw him burn to death and never got the body? Like, it's kind of glossed over very quickly, but
Very quickly.
But I also kind of like that this movie doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, no, I think it's the right move, talking about it by not talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And just hoping that people have forgotten that it ever happened, which they probably have by this point.
Yeah.
Is this one of the suspense sequences that you like, the garbage disposal?
I particularly like the shot. I just like the shot of his hand going
I really
in,
like it.
because
I think it's good. It's good basic horror.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you take a modern convenience, and you create a kind of a sense of fear.
around it, right?
It.
But because if you're a fan of the genre, you're going to assume you know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you have the sort of, what I like is you have Michael Myers stepping behind him in a medium shot of Michael. We're rather close to the character, but
Yeah.
But what I like is when he turns around and he's just right there. And I love the awkward moment where a kid who... It's such a good acting moment because he knows he should be in trouble. And yet he doesn't want to believe he's in trouble. So he just says, hey.
Yeah.
I really like that.
I do too. So the first kill is off screen.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is necessarily a bad choice, but given how long we've waited for it,
I think the second kill is visceral enough.
How long can you offset gratification in a movie that's an hour and 20 minutes?
Right. I think the second kill, not that the killing part is as visceral as the dumbwaiter coming down on the leg. Woo!
Yes, great. Yeah.
I mean, that's some body horror. I mean, I like that. And even though you're seeing it, but you're not seeing it, which is another choice I like. I like that they're showing Michael repeatedly stabbing this teenager in the back, but so you're getting the horror of it, but you don't have to watch it on screen either. Leaving it to your imagination.
I go two ways on the keys through the gate.
Oh, really?
So
Well, but
well,
first,
I mean,
let's back up a little bit because,
Okay.
I mean, you have the moment of, you have John and Molly. They kind of hear a sound, so they investigate. And, of course, Michael Myers is there, and they start running. And I like that they get out. But the jump scare I mean, honestly, it got me I'm only just in the last few years expecting it enough for it to not really startle me.
Oh.
And it's when they're running up the walkway and they kind of stop for a second. And again, it's characters doing exactly what they should do. It's her saying, what the fuck are we going to do? And he says, we're going to do this. We're going to go here. We're going to get to the phone. We're calling 911. She says, okay, let's go. And they start running. And the next thing you know, Michael Myers is right there pulling her hair and throwing her to the ground.
Yeah.
And you get a bit about John because he doesn't run away. He punches Michael square in the face. He's grabbing the hand with the knife. She gets away. She starts running away. But Michael pushes him down, knifes him in the legs. So she comes back for him. You get a little sense of who they are when the shit goes down. And they are, she hits him in the side of the head with a rock. And they both go up. And I love that shot from Miner. And it's one of the parts where I really like the acting of, hang on here, Chris Durand. When he's sharp turn. I like that.
Yeah.
All of that to me is great stuff. And then we get to the gate. And I think that's a great bit.
It is a great bit. It doesn't feel organic. It feels like, constructed classic horror scenario.
It feels constructed, but I also think the actors...
It's okay in a meta movie.
Yeah, I think the actors are doing it good. I love the moment where Michelle Williams drops the keys, and she has this moment where she kind of... In a split second, she looks to the heavens like, I can't fucking believe I did that, and then immediately decides to try and get them so that Michael can't have them. And simply runs out of time. All of that feels pretty organic to me, and it's just.
I prefer the second half of it with the slashing the knife through the iron gate.
Oh yeah,
because it's kind of like a 3D effect without using any 3D.
Without using 3D, right?
And
it's
also really effective suspense horror.
There's nothing the characters can do. Nothing. They have to hope somebody comes to get them. They have to hope somebody hears their voice. And then you get, what is supposed to, I think, be one of the iconic moments of the movie. They certainly focused on it in the preview, I remember.
Oh.
Door to door, Laurie looking at Michael.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, I mean, this so... Did you get the sense that Laurie has kind of figured this all out in her head in advance? This scenario? Without the film necessarily telling you that should Michael Myers find her, she knows how to turn the school into a trap for him. Without it actually being like,
I'll say yes and no.
A Temple of Doom style.
Yeah, right.
Corridor of horrors.
Because they're really, she even has the line, try to live. Yeah. There is one of the things I like, and I always think works in a movie like this.
And I don't mean this as a criticism.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you feel that that's what's going on without the movie telling you that that's what's going on.
I'm not sure if it's pre-planned, but to me, it's like she's run through every scenario in her head.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But what I also like about it is
again,
there's a real fly by the seat of her pants trying to not die,
True, yeah.
And that part I like. I think all of that works.
We didn't need a second knife through the gate, I don't think. We have a second one.
Where?
After the knife throwing, I have it here.
The knife throwing?
Yeah.
You mean when she's throwing knives at him?
Yeah. And there's another knife through the gate kind of bit.
She puts up the drawer. Is that what you mean?
Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit too much like the keys in the gate, but
But once again, like that, like the gate moment, this moment in the kitchen, because what I like about it is she's trapped. She's got nowhere to go. But the movie to me is the movie's not making a huge deal out of that.
No, that's what I love about it.
That's what I like. So it's her just trying to survive. And what I like is, you know, maybe it's a little too much like the other thing, but it's what she has to use. She puts that door open. And what I like is, you know, Michael's kind of got this moment of, that's my favorite knife. And he's trying to get it out. But it gives her a moment to get past him and, you know, through the door.
Right.
And again, I think one of the things that works really well for this movie is the editing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, did we pass up the death? Did we pass up Will's shooting?
Yeah, we did. We've already kind of talked about it.
But I know we talked about it, but do you feel like that was a cop-out because Laurie at that moment is holding the gun and he kind of takes it out of her hand? Are we absolving Laurie? Like, you know, what if it was her? Not that it matters because the movie doesn't kill him anyway, but...
I mean, possibly. Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I could see that. I just, you know, I saw it as part of the, you know, Will being punished.
Yeah, okay.
Sort of idea.
I actually like that moment and that, you know...
I do, and I like the decision to not to have him come back to life.
Yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't, because he so clearly dies and was meant to die.
Yeah.
But I really do genuinely want him to survive, and I think the writers and the filmmakers are feeding off that energy that the character is gonna resonate with people so much that they're not gonna want to see him die. They're gonna want to know he comes back, that he's not dead.
Well, and at least the movie was smart enough to know we can only have one, and if it's gonna be one, it's got to be LL Cool J.
It's got to be absolutely.
Yeah.
And then Laurie goes full on vigilante.
Yeah.
She does a full Loomis.
But before that,
stealing the truck.
Before that, I really like that moment of her getting John and Molly out of the closet, the running to the car. And the whole bit of Michael Myers coming to the car while they're trying, like, again, to me, that's a moment of great editing and racketing up tension in a moment where the movie is working. Like, working exactly how a movie like this should work. It's great.
Another key-based suspense sequence, though. Just
Fine.
It's just a little too much duplication here and there. But I generally agree with you. I think this movie works, and I think this section works. And I love that she steals the truck and takes the gun. It is like, you know, now Will is dead. She is now Loomis. the Loomis we know from the sequels that don't exist. And again, I think the meta quality of the film really helps this final sequence where she's in the car, you know, trying to get Michael for the very last time. In the truck, sorry, trying to get Michael for the very last time. When she says, "Come on, get up," and it's not about the laws of our known universe; it's about the rules of the Halloween franchise. We know he's gonna get up again. And her anticipating that is like a really nice double meaning.
Right.
Like in World, it's like...
Oh, you know what I forgot to ask you, though? What do you think about in-world and out-of-world colliding together where, for some reason, Mr. Sandman means something to Laurie Strode?
Oh, interesting.
As opposed to, you know, it's never something that the character heard in any of the other movies.
Wow, okay. That's interesting. Yeah. Again, I think this movie's meta enough to pull that sort of stuff off.
Yeah, I think so too. I just thought it was interesting.
It is. It's very interesting. So satisfying. The decapitation.
I mean, when you know, reading
and it's so
taking
beautiful.
shape, we know that that moment really made audiences cheer.
Yeah. And it's, yeah, there's, and the thing is, it's a really, like, it's a really beautiful moment, but there's not the kind of ambiguity in it to walk the ending back. So it's actually a really beautiful moment of a brother needing a sister's comfort. It's sort of like the first time this sequel thing has ever worked emotionally in the series.
What do you make of that?
And it's like, it's not a mute paramedic.
No, yeah, right.
It could never be. But like the sibling thing is like, oh, finally, this decision is vindicated because of this beautiful moment.
That moment. What do you make of her reaching towards him, and is it that she decides he's prankster Michael? This is not an honest moment from him, so fuck you.
It's when she realizes he's a mute paramedic. No. I think it's just, again, like, it's where the meta, like, there's what's going on emotionally with the characters, and then there's the decapitation is such a decisive blow.
Yeah.
It's like literally, this is the tidiest way to, a clean kill, the tidiest way to end the series.
Oh, and I love her acting choice right after the head rolls.
Yeah.
That sort of closing your eyes and the deep breath.
And the fact that they choose to fade to black on the sound of sirens.
Yeah. And
for the first time, you don't know if those sirens are coming to put her in jail. Yes. Spoiler alert, that's exactly what they do. So even in a movie which is determined to sort of draw the line under the Halloween franchise, or at least the Michael Myers part of it, in the way that the ending is filmed, you can see the aftermath of it.
Yeah.
That Laurie's going to have to face the authorities, who are going to see her as the killer, not Michael. And it's...
Because she is.
Yeah. So it's interesting that the next movie picks up her accountability, but it over-flavors because what that already is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is still extra-legal justice from a guy who has not been convicted of anything. So it's interesting enough, and the film, even at the end, the way this film ends, knows that.
Mm-hmm.
So you're over-salting the soup next time, because it's already the moral dilemma that it is in the next film. You don't have to add anything to it.
Yeah.
I guess you have to bring Michael back somehow. Or just don't go on, which is what this film is clearly about.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have. I mean,
that's about all we have. I do have one more.
That sounds like a way better movie than I even gave it credit for.
I'm glad you think so. Because I
liked it. I liked it already. I didn't know how much I liked it, so I started talking about it with you. Yeah.
Well, good. What do you think of? Because generally speaking, I like these moments where Laurie keeps seeing Michael and knows he's not there and closing her eyes. But then it doesn't have a good payoff because it's directed clunky when he actually is there. And that's kind of a bummer.
It also, it gets a bit telenovela at times.
Yeah.
Or like the Californians
kind
of style.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other disadvantage of it, I mean, when Michael starts kind of disappearing periodically, it leans in a little too much to the supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
And this film in general does a good job of establishing Michael as a real-world presence. It's only a tiny thing.
Yeah.
But, and it's still within that sort of child playing hide-and-go-seek quality.
Right.
But I could do without him disappearing quite so many times.
Okay, yeah.
In this, when he physically can't do that, because then you get into, is he a ghost? Is he, that sort of thing, which is always less than satisfying. But that's a very minor quibble, and
right.
that isn't. I don't really have a beef with this film at all. I think it's a very successful marshalling of the franchise.
I go both ways in terms of what's really going on with Michael. In terms of being killed.
Well, you don't want to point to
not being allowed to be
either...
killed, whatever. I always like it just happens, and I like not explaining too much.
That's why you hate Halloween Kills.
Whether it's happening or exactly. Whether it's happening or not.
Yeah, no, and I think it just needs to stay in the. It shouldn't lean in too hard to either side.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, I think this film has got the balance exactly where it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
Then just occasionally he disappears, once too many times.
All right.
And there's a totally minor quibbles,
And then we get to Creed.
And then we get to Creed, and not the good kind of Creed, not the Rocky Creed.
No. What other?
First,
what other credit checks do you have other than Creed, though?
Well, Creed is my main one.
Okay.
Because it's a Creed sandwich. Right? It starts off with the Carpenter Halloween theme. Then it goes into Creed, and it goes back into the Carpenter theme. So it's like putting a giant hunk of shit between two pieces of the best bread you've ever eaten. And it's it's like you said, the music is pretty good throughout and doesn't feel dated. And as soon as you bring Creed into it, it's what I call timelessly poor.
Yes,
it sounds bad in any era you listen to it.
Don't have to settle no goddamn score.
Rigging electrician Freddie Saba III. Even the names of the crew sound like their own franchise horror film. Did you notice them watching Plan 9 from Outer Space at any point?
I did not. I remember seeing that in the credits and thinking, where was it?
Either way,
I think it is on when Will and Laurie are on their date. I think that's what it is.
I don't know if it's a good idea to cite the worst film of all time.
Now let's. Well, go ahead.
Digital visual effects. Where were they? Did you see any? I didn't see any.
Digital visual. Maybe. No, I think they really put a ambulance.
I read
over
something
a hill.
taking shape that they tried to digitally put a mask on him at one point, and that's part of the reason why it looks so horrible sometimes.
Right.
But that's all I can think of.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That's interesting. Maybe that's it.
And of course, it ends with "In memory of Donald."
Well, that
Pleasance.
was my big note.
Yeah.
Right next to that.
Less sacrilege.
Right next to that, I wrote, "I disagree."
Less sacrilegious than cursed, but basically still an
because we didn't talk about this. The one thing that I really don't like about the stunt voice acting is that he's saying lines that Donald Pleasance said in all of the other movies. So just use that. What the fuck's the matter with you?
Yeah. Is this the movie? Is it this movie or is it Halloween 2018 where they have a sketch drawing of
this movie?
Loomis.
Of Loomis?
Yeah.
Or The Shape?
Yeah. They have one of Loomis, I think, as well.
Yeah. You mean in one of the newspaper?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's
it's him. It's him in court, right? It's him in testifying in court.
But it's a better drawing than the Shape drawing.
Yeah. I mean, it's the first Halloween movie not to have him in, so
yeah,
I'll give him a little break.
Yeah,
I'll give him a little bit of a break, but that's the voiceover and the photos are as far as it should ever go.
Yes, absolutely.
It's still slightly disrespectful, which is about as good as we can hope for.
Well, future movies will take bigger wrong turns.
Oh yeah, certainly will.
All right, anything left for you?
No, that's it. Yeah.
This is a good movie. God damn it, go and watch it.
Yeah,
it's good.
It's well constructed.
I think
if you like well constructed genre movies,
try this one.
I think you will enjoy this movie.
All right, sir. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have to tell us what you think about Halloween H20. We're fans. We think they got it right.
Fans of everything but the title.
Yeah, that title's unwieldy. And 2018 wanted to say 40, Halloween H40.
Well, that's too short.
Oh, my goodness. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Send us an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. When you hear us next, Halloween Resurrection. Yeah, we got plenty to say.
Not all of it negative.
No, yeah. There's a Richard Dreyfuss door entrance in that movie. Like him in Let It Ride. Except he's exiting. All right. Look forward to that, everyone. Say goodbye to everybody, Tom.
Lights up, Charlie. No sex games until I've eaten.
Boom. That's that 90s sex talk I like to hear.
Yeah. So if you this movie is not dated as badly as you think a movie from the late 90s might, but here's what I think characterizes it as a late 90s movie. Constant talking. Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the house in the first scene never shuts the fuck up, and no one else is there. He's just talking to himself.
Yeah. That's great.
Back in the day, we didn't write lines for people when they
weren't in the room with other people.